one artist who did make it, but then had a downfall, all because of one video, so they say, Billy Squier. And this
Right.
may be my favorite chapter of the book because the story of Rock Me Tonight, that video from 1984, I'm still amazed at that because he was one of the biggest names in rock, but the video had such a negative impact on his career. But I always wondered, is that overblown? But it, it was looked at as the downfall of his career. So you devote an entire chapter to this in the book. Talk about the chapter, why that video had such a negative effect on Billy, and what do you think of it? And what did Billy say about it?
Okay. Well, in the chapter, I talked to Billy, and we spent many hours talking about this, so I could get the full story from him. And I also tracked down all the main players. Like I tracked down the VJs from MTV, his musicians who played with him, to get a really good perspective on the whole thing. I really think that the whole video thing has been overblown. I think it's been, as though it really ruined his career, which is not really the case because, as you know, "Rock Me Tonight" was one of his biggest
It
selling singles.
was, yes.
Yeah, yeah, and he, he still released albums. Another 7 years later, before he actually walked away from the industry, he still had albums, that followed. And it's really interesting. As when I first saw that video, I never thought anything about it, apart from the fact that it was pretty different, But it's interesting that people say that they watch video of Billy sort of on the ground and really doing these sort of moves that really put a lot of fans off. Now, and having the pink clothes and that sort of stuff. Now, as I say in the book, Billy was ahead of his time because if you go a few years forward into the glam rock scene of the Sunset Strip bands like Motley Crue and all this stuff, you notice they had, I mean, the Shredders, for example, had pink guitars, pink. They had more feminine sort of outfits. They did all these sort of moves. They had their hair like that. So Billy was really ahead of his time, but it was too early in the time. And I think that sort of played an effect on his audience, but in no way did it ruin his career. The whole thing about his career was basically later on, where the CEO of one of the label he was with said to him when Billy handed in his album "Tell the Truth" that it was one of the best albums he had given to the label, but unfortunately he was going to bury it because at that time grunge was popular, So Billy got his lawyer straight away and got himself out of the contract, and he just had enough of the industry and just walked away from it, and yeah, and if you go back to the stroke, he sort of tells you a bit about what the industry is really like, if you listen carefully to the lyrics. So it's quite an interesting story. There's a lot more to it than just the video that ruined Billy Squier's career, because it did not ruin his career. Actually, he still had a career.
People want to simplify. They want to find an easy
Yeah,
answer. It's
yeah,
too
yeah.
it's too difficult to have to get into all of the details, the behind the scenes stuff, and all that. It's just easier just to say that that's the reason it was that video. But I agree with you. It really wasn't. It wasn't that big of a deal. But also, you know, a lot of homophobic people at the time. AIDS.
That's right.
It was like just people just distance themselves from
Yeah,
him.
that's right.
I'm
And especially
sure.
like,
I'm
I mean,
sure there was some of it was because of that, but not all of it.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And Billy's explains about that too in the book, and with the Queen Association, because because of Queen have that video with "I Want to Break Free." That sort of, again, the homophobic sort of at that period because of AIDS and his connection with Queen, because there's a track.
He does a song
Uh,
with Freddie. It's on his
that's right,
best
yes,
of.
which the label said they released an edited version for the US. They didn't want Freddie's voice on it because they were worried about the connection with Queen. That homophobic
Right.
attitude.
Right. Which Brian May talked about the downfall of Queen towards the end of the 80s had a lot to do with that mindset. Yeah, there's that. What's the song he does with Freddie? I know it's,
Love, I think "Love Is a Hero." I think it is.
yes,
Yeah,
that's the one. It's a great tune. It's a great tune. And
absolutely.
then he comes back with Enough Is Enough. Was it from 86? That was the follow up to Signs of Life, right?
That's right.
And that's the one that has Rock Me Tonight. Enough is enough. But then Here and Now in 1989, Don't Let Me Go, great song. Don't Say You Love Me. I remember that was on the radio. Creatures of Habit is the one you referred to, and I remember reading about that too. He just got fed up with it, but he's done just fine because and this is a well known story. The publishing,
Mm.
he's got all of the
That's right.
publishing, so
Yeah.
he's set. I saw him play in Connecticut at a blues festival, maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago now. and he just jumped up on there and played a few songs, just jammed, and it was so great to see him because he really he still doesn't go out and tour and all that. So it was so cool to see him do that, and it was such a cool artist move. Like, yeah, I'll go up and just jam some blues tunes. I'm not interested in
Yeah,
going back out there and making a big return. I thought it was
yeah,
cool.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's great. Look, he's absolutely great guitar player. I loved everything, all his output, and yeah, he just sort of he released a new single last year, which is "Harder on a Woman," which is
you're right.
a very sort of great track. It's sort of a very bluesy type thing, but he just does music when he feels like it now, which is really cool because he doesn't need to. The industry's it is a tough industry. I mean, as I talk in a chapter, it's there's a lot of the machinations of the industry is there's a lot of elements to it, but yeah, I mean, it's just like you said earlier. People just want to label one thing, the video that killed Billy Squier, and that's it. They don't want to. I mean, hopefully, with my chapter, people will read it and get the perspective. Because even the VJs from MTV, one of them said to me, he never remembered it being the most hated video, even though the book that came out, on MTV said that he was the worst video ever made, and it's not. And
Yeah.
I also quote. I also give my opinion about because there's a quote from I think Phil Collins from Def Leppard, who in the book I Want My MTV, where he says that about Billy taking his shirt off or whatever, and in the book I write, well, Phil's made a living out of playing live
Oh,
with no shirt on. It's like it's a bit of
yes.
hypocritical there.